You're lying in a cave. It's maybe 40,000 BC. No walls, just rock. The fire outside is burning low, and you can hear things moving in the dark beyond it. You finally fall asleep, and then something finds you. Not out there, in here, behind your eyes. You wake up and your hands are shaking, and whatever just happened felt more real than the rock under your back and the cold air in your lungs. And you have absolutely no framework for what just occurred. No category called dream, no neuroscience, no one to tell you it was just your brain processing the day. Just the dark and the shaking and the absolute certainty that something on the other side of sleep just looked directly at you. That feeling didn't go away when humans built cities. It got more organized. Here's the thing about ancient dream culture that most people completely miss. It wasn't superstition. It was the most rational response available to a genuinely terrifying experience that every single human being on the planet was having with zero explanation for what it was. The oldest written dream records we have come from ancient Mesopotamia, around 3000 BC. And these weren't personal journals, they were government documents. The Assyrians employed professional scribes whose entire job was to record and interpret the dreams of kings. Not because the kings were eccentric, because a king who dreamed badly could not make political decisions the next day. The dream had to be decoded first. Rituals had to be performed. The waking world had to wait for the sleeping world to be dealt with. Think about the organizational infrastructure required for that. These were not frightened farmers. These were administrators of one of the most sophisticated civilizations on Earth, running their entire government around the assumption that what happened behind your eyes while you slept was at least as important as what happened when they were open. Egypt took things even further. They didn't just interpret dreams, they tried to manufacture them. You had a problem you couldn't solve, an illness, a decision, a question for the gods. You traveled to a specific temple. You fasted for several days. You performed the required rituals. Then you lay down on a stone platform inside the inner sanctum, and you waited for the god of that temple to show up in your sleep and tell you what to do. Sick people made pilgrimages specifically to sleep in temples. The sleeping world was not a byproduct of being alive. It was a destination. The Chester Beatty Papyrus, dating to around 1279 BC, is one of the oldest dream dictionaries ever found. It contained more than 200 dream symbols and their meaning. A cat could predict prosperity, a mirror could predict marriage, and teeth falling out could predict misfortune. That last one, teeth falling out, still one of the most commonly reported dreams on Earth right now. Tonight, someone will wake up at 3 in the morning with their heart going and their hand instinctively checking their mouth. 3,000 years between us and that papyrus, and the dream is completely identical. Same image, same physical dread on waking, same complete inability to explain why your brain generated it. That is either a coincidence or it isn't. Now here is where the ancient terror stops being metaphorical and starts being something that modern neuroscience has a very specific and deeply uncomfortable explanation for. Sleep paralysis. If you've had it, you already know exactly what I'm talking about, and you probably don't love that I'm bringing it up. For everyone else, here is what happened. You are transitioning out of REM sleep. Your brain comes online before your body does. For anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, you are fully conscious and completely unable to move. And in a significant number of cases, you are not alone in the room. There is something there. Sometimes it's a weight on your chest so heavy you can't breathe. Sometimes it's a figure in the corner you can't look at directly. Sometimes it's just a presence, a certainty that something is standing right at the edge of your vision, and if you could move, you would run, and you cannot move. Modern neuroscience explains this cleanly. The paralysis is the same mechanism that stops you from physically acting out your dreams during REM sleep. The presence is your threat detection system firing in a state of confused half-consciousness, generating a figure, because that is what the threat detection system does. It finds shapes, it finds faces, it finds something in the corner even when nothing is there. Clean explanation, completely rational, does absolutely nothing to help you when it's happening at 3 in the morning. Now here's the part that should actually stop you for a second. Every culture on Earth has a name for what sits on your chest in the night. The old hag in English folklore, the Mara in Norse mythology, same word that became nightmare by the way. The Mar, the crusher, the one who sits, the Kanashibari in Japan, which literally translates to bound in metal, the Karabasan in Turkey, the Phi Am in Thailand, the Popobawa in Zanzibar, independent cultures on opposite sides of the planet, with zero contact with each other, describing the same experience. In terms so similar, it's genuinely difficult to read them side by side without feeling something shift slightly in your chest. There is no shared cultural transmission that explains this overlap. These descriptions arose independently because the experience is universal. Sleep paralysis happens to roughly 8% of the general population at least once, nearly 28% of students. It is one of the most common anomalous experiences a human being can have, and for most of human history, every single person who experienced it walked away absolutely certain they had been visited by something. The Greeks called it ephialtes, a specific demon whose entire function was sitting on sleeping humans. That word eventually became the Greek word for nightmare. The Romans called it incubus, not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. An actual entity that Romans genuinely believed entered their bedrooms at night, located them by their breathing, and sat down on their chest. There were rituals to prevent it, specific objects placed near the bed, incantations recited before sleep, entire religious protocols developed around the problem of keeping this thing out of your room. For the record, the Romans were building aqueducts and developing legal systems sophisticated enough that we still use their framework today. They were not naive. They were experiencing something real and building the most reasonable explanation they had access to around it. They weren't wrong that something was happening. They were working with incomplete information, which is, to be fair, exactly what we're all doing all the time. There is a clay tablet in the British Museum, dated to approximately 700 BC. It contains a prayer written specifically to be recited after a bad dream. The prayer asked the gods to intercept whatever the dream set in motion before it could reach the waking world, not to comfort the dreamer, to stop what had already started. Because in the Mesopotamian worldview, a bad dream wasn't a symptom of something. It was the beginning of something, a mechanism already running, an event already in progress somewhere between the sleeping world and this one. The prayer is desperate in a way that comes through clearly even in translation 2,500 years later. This person was not unsettled. They were not reaching for comfort. They were trying to stop something, and the fact that we can read that desperation across that distance and recognize it immediately says something about how close that terror still is to the surface. Because here's the part of this that modern science hasn't fully explained away. The content changes. The symbolism shifts across cultures. The specific demon gets a different name depending on which continent you're on, but the terror is constant, identical, across every culture, every century, every level of civilization. The experience of being visited in sleep by something that means you harm produces the exact same response in the exact same part of the nervous system. Your brain on a nightmare and a Mesopotamian scribe's brain on a nightmare are running the same program, the same heart rate spike, the same paralysis of the limbs, the same desperate few seconds after waking where you cannot tell which world is real. The scribe ran to the river to wash the dream off his hands before it could become real. You check your phone and try to remember what you have to do today. The response is different. The experience underneath it is not. And every night, in bedrooms and tents and shelters across the entire span of human history, people have closed their eyes and gone somewhere they didn't fully control, somewhere that had its own rules, somewhere that occasionally sent things back with them when they returned. We built science to explain what that place is. We built religion before that to negotiate with it. We built rituals before that to protect ourselves from it. The explanation got better. The place didn't change. Tonight, when you fall asleep, something is going to happen behind your eyes that you did not choose and cannot fully predict. Maybe it'll be fine. Maybe you won't remember it. Maybe you'll wake up at 3 in the morning with your hands shaking and lie there in the dark telling yourself it wasn't real. Your ancestors lay in the same dark. They didn't have the part where you tell yourself it wasn't real. They just lay there and waited for morning and hoped whatever found them in the night had finished with them. Every night, we still close our eyes and disappear into a place we don't fully control. And every morning, we come back pretending we understand it.